Pedro from A&P-REACTS. I'm here today with Igor Cavalera to talk about Go Ahead and Die, debut self-titled album coming out June 11th on Nuclear Blast. How are you doing?
I'm doing very good today. Thank you for having me on the show. And how are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for taking the time to sit down and talk to me about this record, about this band, this project. I don't know exactly how you want me to refer to it, but I'm going to let you talk a little bit about that. And let's start with that. When did the vision for Go Ahead and Die start to come to life?
It was an idea as far back as 2018, 2019. We had the idea, me and my father, after we did the Nail Bomb Point Blank live. We thought that our vocals went together really well, and that we could do sort of like a Nail Bomb 2.0. But then the realization of it was in May of 2020. That was when we actually started writing songs and making demos and stuff like that. So the actual band has been around for almost a year now.
It's really interesting hearing you talk about that and mentioning Nail Bomb, because the first thing that I thought when I started listening to the album is that this is the Nail Bomb for this generation. I didn't feel like you guys were trying to recreate it, but for the generation that's born, now that is able to listen to this album, this will be their Nail Bomb. Go Ahead and Die will become their Nail Bomb. Are you comfortable with that? With that take on it?
Yeah, I think it's cool. If it was too similar to Nail Bomb, I would feel a little less like that. But the music is different, you know.
It's very different, yeah.
The Nail Bomb had an industrial, lots of samples and stuff like that kind of vibe, whereas Go Ahead and Die is more of a thrash, death metal, punk kind of like mix up. So I don't mind that though, because the imagery is very similar, and the kind of the approach and my voice with my dad's voice is kind of like Nail Bomb. So I'm not bothered by it, because it is strong enough to stand on its own.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I felt the same way. I felt that musically the two are are far away from each other. They're not complete opposites, but they're far away from each other. But in terms of the finger to the man, like the aggression, the anger, the intensity, the lyrical content, a lot of those things are similar at times.
Yeah, definitely. It has a little bit of a political vibe. It has a little bit of a suffering in the world and stuff like that. Definitely gets talked about. So yeah, there is some connections there, even if the music isn't the exact same.
How was the workload divided amongst you guys for this record, as far as the creative approach and putting this whole album together?
Me and my dad did the writing together, so we were the ones coming up with stuff. He gave me a little bit more control. He wanted me to have influence. He didn't want it to just be another of his bands. He wanted it to be us kind of coming together to make something. So it was a mix of us writing, and then we did the demos at the start with a drum machine, like with electronic drums. And that was kind of how we came up with them. And then once we had like 10 or 11 good demos, we sent them to Zach, who ended up playing drums on the record, Zach Coleman. And yeah, once we got him involved, then it was like a real band. But it started with me and my dad just making the demos ourselves.
Do you feel like it's hard? I mean, you've already mentioned a little bit of the influences coming into the sound of this record in terms of death metal, thrash, punk. Do you feel because of those influences, I felt like it was really hard for me to define one specific genre. Like if I'm trying to label you guys as one specific kind of band, it's impossible. I mean, it's just great music, but it's impossible to label. Do you feel like that is a positive, or they could be a hindering aspect to the band?
I see it as a positive. I think if anything, it is going to get more people involved, and it will bring in a bigger audience and stuff like that. And always liked the idea of mixing up stuff, you know, of keeping it fresh and original sounding. Even if the influences are old school, the influences have already been around for a while. I like to take a fresh look at it and try to do something you know, most people aren't doing nowadays by mixing it up.
Well, is the biggest challenge behind this record working with your dad, or there was other bigger challenges? Because sometimes family could become a little bit too critical of each other when you're working in close proximities, you know?
Yeah, no, of course. There was some difficulties, maybe some very minor disagreements about sound or approach and stuff like that. But to be honest, we did a good job. I would say the hardest thing about working with my dad is sometimes his presence. People can be intimidated by him. People can be nervous. You know, I hate to admit it, but some people brown nose him and suck up to him a little bit, and you know, that can be kind of annoying because to me he's my dad. He's the guy who picked me up at school and stuff. You know, he's not you know,
Well, of course.
he is a musical you know, long time professional, but at the same time he's my dad and stuff, so that can be kind of hard dealing with how people act and how people treat him when he enters the room, as opposed to me. You know, I'm just a young kind of scrappy kid that's just getting my start, so sometimes people will kind of be like, oh, you don't know nothing, I'm gonna go talk to your dad, and I'm like, man, that's bullshit. You know, like
I could totally see that becoming annoying after a while.
yeah, yeah, you know, but I take everything patiently, and I'm a pretty calm and collected guy, so I don't let it get the best of me too much, you know.
And I know your dad because I've spoke to him many times, and he's always mentioned to me how much he hates the lyrical aspect of putting an album together. If he could have somebody to write the lyrics for him, he totally would go with that. So the question that I have for you is, on this album, how much of the lyric input came from you?
I did a lot of it. We did write it together. You know, I don't want to say he did nothing, because he did work on it certainly. He came up with some cool lines and stuff. What I will say is, I was the editor. I would proofread the lyrics when we would get kind of to like a final version. I would run back through it and just make sure there's no we're not using words the wrong way, and we're getting the right message across, you know. But yeah, no, he did. He would come to me a lot, be like, "Hey, can you kind of help me out with this part?" You know, because I like writing lyrics. I actually write fiction. That's kind of like my what I'd say is like my side job is I write stories and stuff. So I like it, you know. So it actually worked out really well that I like doing lyrics and he doesn't, because you know, he would just kind of let me have the final look. Okay, this looks good, let's send it out, you know.
So are you the guy that I have to thank for that little nod to the Wu-Tang Clan with "Protect Your Neck"?
Funny enough, that's actually his.
Really?
That was one of his lines. Yeah, no, he likes himself, and I do too, but he likes himself some like 90s rap, like Wu-Tang and stuff like that. And that song is about police brutality and people of color getting targeted and stuff. So I do think that was a little nod of him towards like a hip hop rap group.
Yeah, and I thought it worked perfectly on that track. And continue down that line. This is an album that obviously has a social impact. At least it's socially driven. The message in the lyrics, the aggression of the sound. There's a lot of political stands. At least your point of views on the world that's surrounding us. At least for the last year and a half. Is it hard for a band to be socially aware in today's modern day when everybody's so critical of everybody? Is that a gamble for you guys?
It is, you know, I without a doubt, we're going to piss some people off, and there's gonna be some people that don't like some of our views and stuff like that, especially like I said, like Truckload references COVID and how that was handled kind of badly, and 500,000 people have died in America because it was handled badly. and Toxic Freedom is about police brutality, and like the whole George Floyd incident and stuff like that. You know, it definitely has to do with you know, in my opinion, it shouldn't be touchy. These are things we should be addressing. So to me, it's not touchy, but to other people, they'll see it as a touchy subject. But I don't care. You know, people are gonna make their mind up about you for one reason or another. So if you don't like me because I wrote an anti-cop song, then kiss my ass. I don't know what to say, you know. You know, but it is hard. People are critical. If you say the wrong thing, you step the wrong way, you know, you can find yourself in hot water. I would just like to think that anti-police brutality and anti-oppression and anti-corporatism are things that we could all agree on as metalheads. And you know, we should all be holding a middle finger up to the government right now because they're not treating us good.
What role do you feel like bands like yourselves, like Go Ahead and Die, I think is gonna have their you guys are gonna have your own fingerprint, your own DNA with this record, and there's not a lot of bands taking this sort of stand, at least not in today's modern day. What role do you feel like bands have in order to create a little bit more social awareness, not necessarily be politically driven, but creating social awareness?
Yeah, you know, the way I look at it is creating social awareness should never be a bad thing unless you're demeaning or demonizing the people. So while Go Ahead and Die might have dark lyrics and it might be kind of from an angry perspective in this and that, a lot of it is actually in protest and in support and stuff like that. And personally, I think it's good for bands to do this because there's a lot of fear to speak up nowadays. You know, there's a, you know, a lot of, everyone is scared of being canceled or being called out. And you know, I just look at it as if what you're standing up for is right, then you won't get canceled and you won't get anything wrong. And you know, the more people backing, you know, good things like anti-police brutality and stuff like that, the more people are going to feel comfortable about it speaking themselves. So it might not seem like anything to someone, or it might seem stupid to other people. But in my opinion, the more people that hear my music and go, hey, yeah, maybe cops shouldn't be killing people. Maybe we should have gotten a little more help in a pandemic. You know, maybe the government should be a little more accountable. You know, people will start feeling more comfortable thinking that way. They won't be afraid to do it because they'll see other people voicing that opinion with them and, you know, standing together.
Wow, really well said. Moving perhaps now to a more brighter topic as far as this album is concerned, I want to talk about your bass. All right, like I love the bass on this record, and let me say that riff on Ice Cage, that thing is like sugar for diabetics. It's absolutely phenomenal. I'm playing that song on loop just because of the bass. I love it. How much thought process did you put coming into this record? How much did you want your bass to play an important role in the overall sound?
Well, I've definitely been I've always had the mindset that bass is an important instrument, no matter what people like to say. People like to talk smack about it, but bass is very important. And the fact that on the Go Ahead and Die record, I did bass and rhythm guitar and a couple of leads. You know, I had a lot of input towards it, and the bass specifically, the tone and the feeling of it that I was going for was like Extreme Noise Terror, Holocaust in Your Head, or even the song Bullshit Propaganda that starts with bass. It was just, it needed to be nasty and fuzzy and you know, stand out, because I feel like with a lot of old school metal, the bass was kind of non-existent on some of the thrash records and stuff like that. But I always really liked that crust punk bands would have like bass solos and really heavy fuzzy bass. So that was the approach. You know, it was have a bass tone like Shane Embury while having a guitar tone like in tuned, and
Yeah,
that's
yeah.
kind of how we got that nice meat and potato sound.
Yeah, and I really like it, and I like the fact that you use fuzzy because I think it's raw, is gritty. The overall
Yeah.
sound on the record is very gritty, very raw, but that matches the lyrical content, what then matches the style of the songs you guys. I mean, everything is kind of intertwined. I don't think you can take one piece away from this record without affecting how the overall picture comes together. Do you see it that way as well? It's really the strength of the pieces, not necessarily one pushing everything ahead of the others.
Yeah, no, not at all. It's a whole image, a whole vision, a whole idea. So it's getting pushed that way. The lyrics go with the sound of the music, go with the imagery of the artwork, go with the imagery of the music videos. So it's definitely meant to be a focused, driven assault. You know, I don't have a better word for it. It's definitely meant to be just that wall of noise coming at you like a tank. You know.
Mhm. Yeah, it's very it works because of the strength of the collective, and it comes at you in a very strong path, like demolishing path, song and song and song again. But going back to your bass, I love the sound of the bass. You mentioned fuzzy. I would say at times it's even groovy, and I really like the grooviness that comes from it. Was there a song that you had perhaps a little bit more difficulties with, or in general the band struggle with one or other element of putting this whole record together?
Ice Cage was a little crazy because of the intensity, the speed. It has a crazy little blast beat drum solo, like weird thing in the middle. That was definitely a crazy one to put together. Prophet's Prey was another one that's in the middle of the record. That has like it's kind of a weirder one on the record. It has a kind of acid psychedelic mid part to it that's kind of out of nowhere on the album, but fits really good. But it definitely did take some time of counting measures out, making sure we're getting the right amount of things and stuff like that. But yeah, those two were a little crazy. And the last one, Roadkill, was kind of crazy because that's like a 6 almost 7 minute
Yeah,
song.
it's the longest
um
track on the record.
yeah, that's the closest thing to almost like some sludge and stuff on the record a little bit, some slower kind of more heavy groovy vibes. But yeah, those were the couple that it took some finesse and whatnot to get just right, whereas some of the other tracks are more straightforward.
What about the vocals? I felt like the vocals on the record had a very interesting mix, and the mix allowed them to have a very interesting sound, regardless of who was coming in with vocals, of the style or the approach. The overall sound on the vocals was really interesting to me. How do you define that sound, and what were you guys trying to achieve with it?
My biggest thing that I guess I can say I didn't want was I didn't want it to sound too polished. I didn't want it to sound too clean. I wanted it to stay uh, very raw. And we were in a pretty nice studio, so I was kind of sweating like, oh man, is this too nice? I don't want it to turn into like this pretty sounding thing. And then so for the vocals specifically, I initially actually wanted to scream into either just like a handheld or like an actual headphone and get like a really hot, uh, distorted, naturally distorted sound. And everyone in the studio is like, why don't we have you scream into the professional night mic, and we'll just give you a little distortion. And usually I don't like doing effects and things like that, but we sort of faked like a shitty tone for the vocals, and that was actually the approach. For mine, a lot of those high pitched screams, I just wanted to be abrasive and the opposite of easy listening. So I wanted it to be very just punk, raw sounding.
It matches the whole flow of the record. The vocals, to me, the style and the approach that you guys went with match the raw and the grittiness and the fuzziness, like you said, of the sound. And I think the two really go well together. And if there's one element that I felt that pushes the album forward, is the vocals. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, no, the vocals definitely tie it all together. You know, without the vocals, it's a good thrashy, fast record. But you add the intensity and the grittiness of our voices, and then the lyrical content as well. And yeah, no, the vocals, they definitely they can definitely bring some of those songs together.
Will Go Ahead and Die be a one-time thing, or are you guys planning that this is going to be something you guys going to continue to do and release albums?
I mean, we've talked about albums, like second, second albums, third albums, things like that in the future. Nothing is confirmed, so it's one of those things we want to see how it does. If we do some tours and we do some shows and we have some pretty decent album sales, then yeah, I don't see any reason why we wouldn't make it like a full on band, But yeah, that kind of comes down to what the future holds. If we have the time for it, stuff like that, Obviously, me and my dad are both in other bands as well, so we're busy dudes.
Yeah, you guys are definitely busy dudes. And on that note, I have one last question for you. And that is, what do you get from Go Ahead and Die that you don't necessarily get from all the other things that you're involved in, either be writing or the bands and the music that you do?
Go Ahead and Die is definitely the first time I've been in like, I guess you could say a old school death metal or old school thrash type band. Most of my other bands have been more experimental, more sludgy or stonery. That's kind of my personal interest I do with my bands. So Go Ahead and Die is a whole other side of me writing really fast and pissed off and less psychedelic and less groovy, more caveman.
more caveman metal.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, that's a good way to describe it. On that note, Igor, I really want to thank you for your time today, man. It was an absolute blast to talk to you. I'm sure we'll talk again soon. And in the meantime, all the best to you and your family. Stay safe out there, and congratulations on the great record.
Oh, thank you so much as well, man. And thank you too for having me on the show, man. It's been a pleasure.
My pleasure. Take care, man.
Yep, definitely. Thank you. Have a good day.
You too.